Boom. Hey internets. This is not based on a Q&A for this video. Just wanted to go over things that I maybe have gone through before in a lot of my earlier videos, and I always lose sight of some people who might be super novice and clicking onto my YouTube channel. And by the time a person that watched enough videos and is ready to do like one-on-one consulting with me, there's a lot of things that get missed that maybe I feel like I should have made another video about. So a lot of ways I made videos about this before, but in any case, what people get exposed to in terms of digging in the crates of figuring out what I've spoken about before. I know people have different timetables for which they're subscribing onto the channel. So in any case, as I've titled this, whatever I've titled it, I just want to talk about some of the difficulties of launching a brand. So this is gonna be whether you're doing merch, and I'm gonna do a separate video on, or I probably have already posted a video on merch. People doing merch if they're influencers. That's a little bit of a different. I mean, a lot of the basic things are the same, but there's a few nuances in talking to that crowd. Since I work with a lot of influencers now, those are the people who have the demand rather than just a clothing company saying, "Hey, John, can you come work with us and do this or design this or direct this and that." So realize, especially if you're a one-person crew, or maybe you have a partner or two partners or two best friends that you guys are trying to launch this thing with, that you guys are going to be wearing a lot of hats, okay? That goes with any business, but there's differences. There's very big differences in fashion or apparel or a startup clothing line that are just very taxing and laboring. I should say, a lot of people say 9 out of 10 businesses fail. I think it gets to 100, maybe even 1,000 brands fail versus the one that makes it. So the example that you might have of a brand that has made it in the last several years, I mean, one thing to keep in mind is, have they been doing it for 10 years? And then when you say successful, like what kind of top line revenue are we really talking about? And that's an equalizing question for a lot of different brands that you might use as a case study. So when I say it's tough, it's also tough to sell a product on Amazon. Let's just say, I'm just using this as another business model example to versus, but there's very set things that you have to do. So you can say that I'm going to do that for X amount of hours every weekend while I'm doing my regular job, and you can gauge the success. So you can set a stop loss very clearly with that, like, oh, if I haven't seen any results in the first 2 months, and you can define results by saying I haven't made X amount of money in 2 months, then I'm going to stop. And within the, let's say, 3, 4, or 6 hours that you put in a weekend, you know that you have to find a product, find a wholesaler, get it, try selling it, that whole sort of thing, all that approach. I'm not selling that. I'm just saying you guys should be familiar with whatever the process is for another business. Apparel has so many moving parts, and it's going to be very time consuming. So the whole thing, you have to have a passion for fashion, even though it's kind of a corny saying, rings very true, because you're going to spend a lot of thankless hours trying to be the 1 in 100 that's going to make it. And any brands that have already experienced this, please chime in the comments and give some testimony to some of this, because I talk to, obviously, I talk to brands weekly, like tons of brands that are trying to make it to another level and make some noise and trying to make it to an actual company. And I'm just saying it's a very, very difficult path. So you, in the beginning members of whatever your company are going to be doing design. You're going to be doing production. Now, this is if you're not testing. I've done videos where you can use a third party. YouTube is partnered with Teespring, so they make it easier for influencers or anybody. I mean, you don't have to be an influencer, but you can make your clothing line and just make a visual asset, throw it on Instagram, put it on Shopify, or however you're selling it, a store envy, like whatever you want to do, and see if it sells. And then they will produce one, there's no minimum, they'll do one. Typically that'll be DTG, of course, but they could do bulk as well, and they kind of take some of that risk away. But Does it cost more? Absolutely, it costs a lot more. So your margin is going to be very little. Well, let me just throw a number out there. Maybe it's like $3. Whereas if you're getting a t-shirt screen printed at a screen printing shop and taking all the risk, your actual cost for the shirt might be around $6. And if you sell it for 30, you can see what kind of margins you have there on a unit basis. But don't fool yourself, because remember, the real numbers you're dealing with is making the entire run, which is going to be several $100s, and that money is spent. So if you don't sell the t-shirt, then your risk lies in there. I'm going a little too deep into it just because it's so prevalent in my head, but you're going to be doing design production if you go that route, okay? So you'll be handling a vendor that's going to be making the t-shirts or embroidering the hats or embroidering the beanies, whatever you're doing, or sewing on woven labels. If you're doing labels, that means you're getting production done probably in China. You can get it done in the US and then get them all sewn on. I've heard of definitely people grabbing the sewing machine and sewing on labels themselves per cell. I've heard of that. So understand that that's going to take time. Someone needs to do the production of sewing it all together, even running out of thread or the sewing machine breaking down. All of these startup costs. Some people will invest in some screen printing equipment, just realize that that's an entire craft that you have to learn. So you're going to burn a ton of hours just learning how to screen print a shirt. Some people can pick it up quickly, but when I say pick it up quickly, that's going to require several weekends or nights after work on the week learning how to screen print on this equipment that you just bought. That's, by the way, big tip. You should probably check Craigslist or any used place to buy screen printing equipment, because a ton of people figure out how hard it's going to be, and they sell their equipment. They'll typically sell the whole package so you can get it, in a very discounted rate. If you just look on Craigslist or whatever, wherever you are in the world, if there's a discounted way to buy screen printing equipment, if you go that route. So investing in all of those just to get the product done. Now you have to deal with shipping, so fulfillment. So as you know, we live in an Amazon economy where you gotta race to get it out once people click buy. Think of yourself and how impatient you are once you place order. If you don't get a correspondence in like 3 days, you're like, hey, where's my package, right? Before this technology economy, and quite frankly, before Amazon upped the stakes, I would say, we're a little bit more patient with shipping. But now you're on the other side where if someone orders your product, you got to get it out ASAP. So know that you're competing with market standard of delivery. So logistics is a big thing. Making sure you have the product and then picking and shipping. So if you're doing that with a full-time job, just realize how tough that's going to be in coordinating between that. If you do have partners, if 3 of you are starting a business, communicating between the 3 of you to figure out who's doing what, and also having a clear plan of responsibilities and who's doing what. So when things start moving, you guys don't get into unnecessary fights, and you're gonna get in fights no matter what if you're partnered, because it's going to be a new thing to kind of get the operation done. That's why, and I'm not pushing consulting on anybody. That's why when I consult with a brand, especially when it's something very new, it's usually very helpful to get them to even just understand these concepts because they never ran through it before. And so, yeah, all of those things require a lot of hats. Design, production, logistics. We haven't even got to social media, which really is marketing. So you're getting your Instagram views up, getting maybe a YouTube together. That's a long-term investment of getting subscribership. So you should have started that and the Instagram way before you launched any product. So that's going to be somewhat of a full-time job right there. And then how you're selling. So Shopify, but if you're bootstrapped, some people can't do the monthly. There's a couple different options in terms of a free e-commerce store, and then updating that. Make sure you have visuals. Fashion is a visual language, so you got to make sure you have all of that together. And then having a long-term plan. People are typically very poor at budgeting. Most of your money is going to go into production unless you do the test phase where you use a third party such as Teespring. But once you see success and movement in some of the designs, you want to think of transitioning into mass production. That's going to be a big change in your spending pattern as a company. So yeah, I've covered a lot there in a small amount of time. Just a lot of different things to think of and all different opportunities to falter maybe. Not to be negative, I'm just trying to be very real and transparent. There's a lot of ways to, die by a thousand cuts right there. It's not one big massive blow. It's going to be death by a thousand cuts. So there's a lot of opportunity for little holes in the boat in all of those different sectors of creating a clothing company. So just some things to think about. If you have questions, of course, as always, drop them all down below. You can email me, of course. Follow me on social media when you get a chance. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.